Sup gamers, welcome back to another unscripted video essay kind of video where I wanted to talk about my thoughts on the Five Nights at Freddy's chapter after I had a chance to play it, after I had a chance to review all of the material that we had presented to us, and now a couple of days out, I think I've been able to put my impressions into more definite terms, and so I have a list of bullet points here that I'm going to read off of, talking about the killer, talking about the map, generally going over some of the patch note changes as well, because that's what happened this patch. Now, of course, this is all in reaction to a PTB. It's not going to be in reaction to what is going live in a couple of weeks, but I think that on a whole, I am very happy with the way that this chapter has gone down, and that all starts off with the new killer that we have in Springtrap. So Springtrap, I think, is a killer that looks deceptively simple on the surface, but he is very strangely intricate, and it kind of lies in your ability to think ahead, which I really like. You can throw the axe at someone and hit them like you normally would over a loop with Huntress or Xenomorph, or even Deathslinger in some ways, and, you know, that's kind of the base use of the power. But I've noticed that with his add-on specifically, there's a way where you can actually make it so that you just want to be 4.6 all the time, and you use the axe as either more of a zoning tool, or you use it as your own, like, personal pocket buff, or you don't pick up the axe right away because you want to be 4.6 to close distance on people. And I think that there's a lot of, like, little intricacies in there that make him so much more interesting than the rather, I would say, reductive statement that people have made of being like, oh, it's just Huntress. Like, Huntress can't do a lot of the stuff that Springtrap does, because how does, you know, Huntress throw hatchet explain the other components of the power, and also the relative skill floor of this character? Because this character throws the axe at a much higher speed, and there's a lot of differences, and I don't want to, like, make a lot of the video just pointing out and writing down, like, lists of differences between this killer and Huntress, but I think that it's reductive because the killer can also be compared to Xenomorph, the killer can be compared to Onryo, the killer can be compared to Wesker, to the Unknown, and at this point he might just be a unique killer. And I think that the Huntress comparison should really only be used as a way to introduce someone to the M2 power. How do you equate his basic power for the M2? It throws kind of like a Huntress hatchet, but not really. That's probably where it should stop, because Springtrap really is a lot more unique than that. And when people start to realize and start to dig into the potential of this character, I think he becomes a lot more interesting that way. And like, his playstyle is actually modified by add-ons, which is not something that you see with a lot of killers. I think Dracula kind of has something like this, where you have some add-ons that improve the bat form, some add-ons that improve the wolf form, some add-ons that improve the hellfire pillars. And so if you want to play around one specific component of your power, now wolf form is probably the strongest overall, just because of the distance that it can create and also the distance that he can close with it. But you can choose add-ons to change the playstyle for Dracula, and it's the same thing here with Springtrap. You have add-ons that make it so that the AoE gives buffs or debuffs, or gives stealth, or can stay in the environment for less time so you can pick it up quicker. You can see the trajectory in case you're struggling to see how the axe actually travels. You can make it so that survivors have it stuck in their back for longer, so that if you're trying to get pulls more often, they have a harder time removing it, kind of like the tar add-on from the artist. And for that reason as well, that's why I actually really like him. I think that it's really cool that his add-ons actually change his playstyle, instead of being like, when you are hit by the axe, you gain this effect. The axe has a slightly faster wind-up time. You know, things that are just more about the mechanics of it, but actually being like, hey, you can be an M1 killer if you want to be. You don't have to always use the M2. And with all the components of his power, like how he's got this telegraphed map-dependent mobility, but he has an anti-loop power in his axe, depending on how you choose to use it. He has stealth capabilities. He's a 24-meter terror radius killer that can probably pair with monitor and abuse. And also like time-saving measures, which is something that you don't see very often. I think the only other killer that can grab using their power is Wesker, right? I can't remember if that's accurate or not. I think I could be wrong. But he can grab with his power, and so that saves him time because you're not M1ing, wiping the blade, knocking the survivor on the ground, walking over, picking up the survivor, putting them on your shoulder. Instead, it's just you M2, whack someone with the hatchet, or with the axe, hatchet, there goes the Hunter's comparison again. But you hit him in the back with the axe, and then you pick it out of him, and you put them on your shoulder, and then they're on the hook immediately again, and you're ready to go into a door or to hunt down anybody else nearby. And I think that that's really unique, and I think that that's also a really big component of what makes him so strong. So I think he's actually stronger than Huntress in the lower wind-up time versus the actual throw speed. Like, Huntress throws at a moderate speed when she doesn't wind up, but then as she charges it, she can throw longer distances. Whereas Springtrap, when he has the axe ready to go, he just hucks that thing at full force. Like, that thing looks like it would actually kill somebody. And then the power, he has better mobility because of the security doors, so he can teleport across the map and then become stealthy. And he has those a very modular power, as I was talking about, like changing with the add-ons. I think he's also stronger than his contemporary in form of Onryo, and in not being dependent on your M1. And also he has stealth without a downside. Like, Onryo, you demanifest and you can phase through survivors and you don't get stunned, and you are undetectable and you're a little hard to see because of the shimmering effect. But you also can't M1 survivors, whereas this guy is just, I'm gonna walk into a door. When I walk out of this door, I have undetectable for, I think it's 20 seconds. It feels like 20 seconds. I have undetectable for 20 seconds, and I can still throw my axe at people, and I can still M1 people. And if I want to reset that, I can go back into a door. If I want to extend the duration of that out to 30 seconds, there's an add-on for that. I mean, there's an add-on for everything, it feels like, depending on how you really want to play this killer. But he's like, I feel like he's weaker than killers with free mobility, like Wesker. I do think that this killer can be weaker than Wesker because you don't have that passive slowdown. You don't have the double dash. You're not faster over windows. You have to be in loops. You're pretty reliant on using your axe properly, depending on the add-ons that you've brought and having the right idea for it. And yeah, he is slightly punished, set back by missing the axe throw if the add-ons are not there to supplement missing the axe throw. So that you have to be really careful with the way that you build this killer. And unfortunately, he does feel a little bit add-on reliant in that way. Like, ironically, with him having such a modular power, the power is also nothing without its add-ons. If you're not running Foxy Hook, you're not running Celebrate Poster, you're not running any of the other good add-ons that this killer currently has, you don't really have a power, and you really don't have a whole lot going for you if you don't have anything on the M2, or even on the security doors, because there's a couple of add-ons that affect that as well. But he is technically the first hybrid ranged character. He is 4.4 with a ranged attack. When his ranged attack is down, he's 4.6, but just can M1. But then you combine that with haste effects, you combine that with any other number of things, and it gives him, if you really think about it, it gives him pretty much every perk as an option, depending on how you want to customize the power. One of the build ideas that I had, or one of the combo ideas I had, was the Faz Coin, which is an iridescent add-on with the Foxy Hook. Faz Coin makes it so that you get undetectable for 10 seconds after the power sticks into the ground, and Foxy Hook gives you 10% haste. So you throw that in the ground at your feet, you gain haste, and you're undetectable, and you're 4.6 immediately, as soon as that thing hits the ground. So you become this like stealthy, speedy M1 killer that can jump scare people a lot easier than people might realize. And that's a combo that I'm really excited to try. I might even have it on in the background of this video for some footage that I gathered, but I haven't played it yet. I just have it all based out in theory. I think he has a moderate skill floor and a moderate skill ceiling. So I think that the like once you use the power a couple of times, you'll understand perfectly how it works. The security doors are very simple, and the axe itself, it's less simple just because it has a weird trajectory. The way that I understand the trajectory is that it travels 6 meters before it gets heavily affected by gravity, no matter what direction it's thrown. If it's thrown straight and in a straight line, eventually it'll hit like the 6 meter point, or 6 to 8 meter point, and then start dipping down drastically at the end of it. If you throw it straight up into the air, once it goes 6 meters up into the air, it drastically dips down right away. And because of that, I think that orbitals happen to be the highest skill cap thing that this killer can do. Because initially it looks like, oh, behind tall rocks you can't really hit anything, but if you know how to manipulate the arc, which is it's a very strange arc. It's not as parabolic as Huntress's or even Clown's projectiles can be. But if you throw it in the right direction and you get a feel for how that works, that probably is the highest skill cap thing that this killer can do, and it is lethal. It is very, very strong. I've seen some great clips already on Twitter of people landing these kind of like quote-unquote orbital shots over the top of many obstacles. So I think that's pretty cool. One thing that I don't particularly love about Springtrap has to do more on the survivor side of things. I don't like how long it takes survivors to reveal Springtrap, which I know is like, oh, so you want to nerf the power. I don't want to nerf the power. I want to make it so that the survivors actually have something to do with the power. Because as it stands right now, the traveling is super dodgy, especially if you're not in communication with other people. And you'd be like, okay, he's in a door, don't go through right now. Oh, he's stealthing, but you can go through a door to try and go across the map now. Those sort of things. Without that kind of communication, I should say, the security doors feel really dangerous, and the cameras themselves taking so long to reveal the killer, and then also shutting off the security doors because you've run out of battery. Now, of course, it's in style with Five Nights at Freddy's, but I think that when it takes so long to reveal him, when you could be doing anything else on the map, it just feels kind of useless for survivors. I don't think that survivors are revealing with the cameras as much unless they're new to the power and they want to experiment with how it feels. And then once they experiment with how it feels, it doesn't feel all that great to use on the survivor side. And so I'd actually like for that to have a little bit more payoff, for that to have a shorter reveal time. But then in compensation, maybe he is revealed for a shorter time as well. I don't know. I want there to be a reason to actually use the cameras for the survivors. And for the killer side of things, whenever you grab a survivor by crossing at the same time through a security door, or you grab them off of the axe, he can still be blinded immediately, which kind of feels bad. Wesker doesn't get blinded when he picks somebody up with his power for a few seconds, and so I think that the same kind of I think that the same treatment should be extended to this killer, especially when him being able to get a grab on his power is a reward for using his power correctly. And being locked into a very telegraphed animation for somebody to easily blind you off of feels more like you're punished for actually using the power, and I'm not too big a fan of that. And so I hope that he gets a little bit of like a base kit Lightborn, because then he won't be quite as frustrating to use with his power, and won't just become like a zoning M2 killer that has stealth sometimes. So that doesn't feel quite as good to play with. His add-ons are great as well, and they have a lot of possibility with a few really clear standouts to me. Those specifically being the Bonnie's guitar strings, which reveals, or it makes it so that the aura of the generator, or the progress of generators, can be determined by the color of their aura. The more red they are, the closer they are to completion, and so it gives you a lot of information on being like, oh cool, that generator's almost done, let me go use that door over there, and then push survivors off of it, use my perks, whatever. His other add-ons are Foxy Hook. I think that even though you give 10% haste to the survivor, it still feels like Clown in a way, where if a survivor gets into the clown gas, then yeah, you should ideally not be setting it up in a location where they can make use of that. And a similar way for Springtrap, if you really play around having this add-on in particular, and don't pick up the axe right away, you can actually get a lot of use out of Foxy Hook. And then I think Celebrate Poster, initially I was like, oh, that's kind of a meme how both of us are 20% faster and vault faster and everything, but the real nuts thing that I didn't think about was that when that axe is launched, we both gain 20% haste, but now you're oblivious, so you can't hear my terror radius, and it's harder to determine the direction that I'm coming from. And on top of that, I've gone from being a 4.4 killer with 20% haste to a 4.6 killer with 20% haste. And sometimes that speed that survivors get from having Celebrate Poster, or from suffering the effects of Celebrate Poster, makes it too quick for them. I think that survivors are very used to specific timings of things, and so when that timing is thrown off by something, it becomes a lot easier and more actionable it becomes easier, more actionable. I don't think there's really anything to follow up with on that. On another note, part of his design that I really like is that I love his voice lines and his overall goofy tone. It reminds me a lot of Chucky. I like Chucky. I think Chucky's goofy, but I think he's still sinister, and that's how this character feels to me as well. He's goofy, he's sinister, he's a drama queen. He knows that he is just he's the biggest, like, baddest thing that he's ever seen. And he's like, yeah, I know that I'm cool, and so I'm gonna be cool for a little while. The Mori is kind of weird to me. It's a weird animation because I don't know what it's supposed to communicate, and I feel like it does several things all at once. So you grab the person, pick them up by their skull, and then you stab them and lift them up with the knife, and then you throw them onto the torture rack. Like, does he want the person to become an animatronic and he's hollowing them out for an endoskeleton? I'm not entirely sure. Does he just have Shreddy fast chair to kill people with? Is he, like, it doesn't feel like one fluid motion. Like with Dracula, you drink the blood and you throw the glass away. With Kaneki, he's clearly just trying to eat the person, and so he'll, you know, eviscerate them and then knock them on the ground and then eat them while they're on the ground. Houndmaster has the dog maul you and then stomps your face, and like it all kind of has like one motion that goes towards one final thing, whereas Springtrap is like, I'm going to do that, and then 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 I'm going to jump scare you, or like scream at you on the ground. It doesn't, I know that the animation is very technical. I am sure that the people who worked on it had spent so much time on it, and I think that the actual technical aspects of the animation and the skill on display to make that animation work well is no small feat from the animators. So I'm not trying to detract from the clear skill that's been put in here. I just think that it is a bloated and messy presentation, whereas I think the better Moris tend to be the ones that have like a very clear straight line, and they do one thing to its finality. Whereas this one's just like, I'm gonna open up a hole in the back of you and then drop you on the ground. I'm like, okay, sure, why not? His perks are a lot better than I thought, too. Phantom Fear is actually nuts. I thought, oh, it's like 2 seconds of aura every 60 seconds. Like, that's bad. But the real crazy thing is that it's actually like an anti-hiding perk. It's really good. You just get free information for existing, and I think it's going to make Calm Spirit meta again. If you guys remember, excuse me, if you guys remember when Ultimate Weapon was the meta perk, now I think that this is going to make Calm Spirit meta again. Is everyone running Springtrap, trying to get their adepts done, and running Phantom Fear. So I think Calm Spirit will become meta again because of this perk, because it's actually just so darn good. Help Wanted is actually good for gen kick builds for M1 killers, I'd say. I think Deathslinger can benefit from it quite a bit. I think Singularity can benefit from it quite a bit, just to give a couple examples there. And Haywire is definitely his weakest perk, but it still fits well into endgame builds. And I think it's better than None Are Free from Kaneki, because Kaneki's perk, I block all the window and vault locations for a minute, but if you don't have a killer that can move across the map, that has a lot of mobility, that can actually capitalize on the fact that all of these pallet and vault locations are blocked for over a minute, if you've hooked everyone once with an endgame build, then you don't get any use out of it. Whereas Haywire might actually dissuade people from using exit gates and then force them to try to do something else. You combine that with Remember Me, you use Haywire, you use recently buffed Terminus, and then some other endgame build. I was thinking Hex Noed, but because you can go stealthy in the endgame, teleport to a door, not only do you have 20 seconds of undetectable, but you also have 4% haste, and all survivors are exposed, so you can M1 them immediately. So I think that it can fit in, Haywire can fit into endgame builds. It's a little bit janky otherwise, but it's a decent perk because of that. So with all that in mind, I think that the killer is overall pretty fun. Probably in my top 10 killers currently, if it weren't for the security doors being map reliant. Some maps, as we know, with xenomorph tunnels or Onryo TVs, they tend to spawn in weird locations relative to the generators that they're supposed to be next to, and I can imagine that if I play a game on Midwich, I'm just going to be like, oh god, these doors are in awful locations, because just the way that those maps always tend to work. Swamp also feels pretty awful. I saw Otts playing a game of Springtrap, and he got taken in a custom game. Not taken to, but randomly assigned the swamp map. And the spawns for those doors were literally all edge map. They were nowhere near the center of the map, which is really bad. So I'm not looking forward to playing this killer on some specific maps, but I'm looking forward to playing this killer just kind of in general, because there's so much to do with him. So I'm very excited to play on live. I have some sample builds. I made up my own couple of builds. Some YouTube comments provided some builds as well. I want to play them all. I want to have fun with all of them. Gonna be playing the hell out of this killer when he finally releases in a few weeks. And yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing him in conclusion. Now, the next thing, the less exciting things, but this is YouTube and people don't stick around for too much. Sorry, that's I gotta apologize for that. I've been doing that a lot lately. I know that there are people who are watching this and people who are actually interested in listening to what I have to say, and so by saying those things, I feel like I'm accidentally alienating a lot of people. What I mean to say by that is that YouTube analytics show that there is a silent majority of people who do not continue watching past the minute to 30-second mark even. They'll click off of any video in general. They're like, oh, I misclicked on this, or I don't like this person's voice, or I don't, I'm not actually that interested in this topic because of the way it's being presented. Whatever the case, I'm just a cynic about that, and I do feel bad about alienating people, so I'll try to do that less going forward. Anyway, the map. I actually really like the layout of the main building and the design. It feels like it has strong windows that loop around to the outside to compensate for the poor pallets. Like the main party room, depending on the iteration that you get, sometimes only has one semi-safe filler pallet that spawns, and that's about it. The ball pit room sometimes has one semi-safe pallet that it spawns, and that's about it. And if the pallet doesn't spawn, then it becomes a window. And so I think a lot of the strength of the map for Survivor comes down to how you can use the windows to loop to fill their pallets on the outside, to then run back into the map, to then go to the good windows that are all around it. There's a lot to look at, which gives it personality and makes it stick out compared to a lot of the maps, and it's fun to walk around in. Like, even if I'm you know, it could be recency bias. I don't doubt that it probably is recency bias, but I like looking at the things on the map. There's a lot to look at in there, and so I have a lot of fun with it. I think that the map is cool looking, but it does have the curse of the Withered Isle realm, where the main building does not matter on a meta scale. Like, after the main generator is done, and there might be one more, because there's usually one that, or sometimes one that spawns in the main entrance near those windows, the main building doesn't retain its value. Like, you don't need to continue chasing around main as killer once the main gen is done. And that sucks. And like, I want to actually have a reason to be in main, but after the generator in main is done, it's like, okay, cool, I'll just go chase around the filler pallets. And without the like other discernible landmarks on the map, because the only thing that's really there is the pizzeria and is the shack, the rest of it feels kind of barren. You compare this to its contemporaries in the Withered Isle offering, like Greenville or Garden of Joy, where you have the statue location in Greenville, or you have the parking lot in Garden of Joy. You don't have something like that, unfortunately, in the FNAF realm. Like, after you're outside of the pizzeria, it's just a bunch of filler tiles and a shack, and that's kind of it. And so not having to go to main, and then also not having a whole lot to make the map visually distinct outside of its main building, does make the map feel a little bit barren. And I think that it can be killer-sided in the way that Greenville Square is killer-sided. And what I mean by that is that if the generators are done in the wrong sequence, specifically by doing main as one of the first gens, this map falls apart. Because when that map, again, like I said, when that gen is done in main on this map, the killer doesn't have any reason to go back to main, so the playing field that they have to operate on is significantly smaller now. And I think that the map is killer-sided in the way Greenville Square is killer-sided for that specific reason. However, if the map is split up properly and you leave main gen for one of the later ones, or you do the one in the main entrance to then split up the map even more, that makes the map a little bit better for Survivor. But beyond that, and with main having just kind of mediocre filler palettes that don't go into windows very well, it makes the map just feel kind of eh. It feels... like, I love how it looks, right? But I think that looks can only save its actual gameplay so much, to a certain point. And when you don't have a reason to go to main anymore, then there's no point in being in main. And that's the simplicity of the matter, unfortunately. So, I like the map. I like how it looks. I'm just disappointed or upset? No, I'm just sad. I'm just sad that it's not like, oh, we don't have a reason to chase around the pizzeria, like you're actually being chased like a mechanical killer like you were in the games. Even though you didn't have free roam in the regular games until basically Sister Location. But you get what I'm going for here. Now on to the patch note changes as well. I'm just going to go over these very briefly in very general terms. Vecna has some buffs that have come to him that actually will make him less frustrating to play. I want to play Vecna, which I know is surprising because I hate playing Vecna normally, but they removed 5 seconds off of all of its cooldowns, so he actually feels like he has a power in between his other power cooldowns. He actually can use his powers at the start of the game, which I thought was bizarre that he couldn't, because other killers like Nurse and Hillbilly can use their powers, or Blight can use their powers at the start of the game, but God forbid that Vecna flies at you. There's also another funny thing. One of the changes that I thought was really funny is I think there's like a Cloak of Elvenkind, I believe is the name of the add-on. Look, I hate the killer. I don't know the name of the add-ons very well, but this one stuck out to me and I'm trying to remember it. And it makes it so that when you fly in the PTB right now, when you fly, your tear radius is reduced by 22 meters. It used to be 8 meters, now it's 22 meters. You pair that with Monitor and Abuse, when you fly, and fly is faster and it lasts for a second longer, when you fly you have a 2 meter tear radius. So you use fly as a means of stealth. And I think there are there add-ons that reduce the cooldown of fly. I can't remember if there are add-ons, and you run that with the Cloak of Elvenkind, you can become so incredibly stealthy while traversing the map at incredibly high speeds. And I think that that's a really funny combo that I'd like to see some Vecna players. I might even try myself, but I'd like to see some Vecna players try out themselves too, because they will be better informed on how to use that killer. Artist got changed a lot. A lot of her add-ons got touched. I don't think she deserved all that, to be quite real with you. That's all I have to say. Artist is already so underpicked, and I don't think that it's a good idea to be nerfing the potential of an underpicked killer just for the sake of buffing a couple of underutilized add-ons. You need to give people more reason to actually play the killer, because as she stands right now, a lot of people view her as a zoning killer. Like, oh, yep, no, I'm gonna commandeer this pallet. And the survivor's like, okay, cool, you're putting a bird down, I'm going to go to the next tile. And the gameplay loop can get kind of boring in that way. But she feels satisfying. But she's not a good range killer. She's good at gaining information from range. But I think that trying to nerf what's already a struggling killer in terms of play rate, in terms of the eyes of the actual player base, is, it's the wrong direction to take the killer. And I hope that these changes do not go to live. AFK Crow System. My goodness, I'm getting all kind of tongue-tied today. AFK Crow System changes are nice for both sides, so you can't really hold people hostage anymore, and you can't be held hostage anymore, which is nice. I think that that's good. I also think that there's very rarely a reason in this game that you'll be AFK for more than 45 seconds. Especially if you're just kind of hiding out. I think like having more anti-hiding strategies is a good idea in some ways, because forcing people to just hide in the end game, there's 2 people left and there's 3 generators remaining, and now the killer has to wait 10 minutes to abandon, or they have to walk around and hopefully find a survivor at some point. It is by far the most boring way for games to resolve, and I think that survivors should not should be, you know, punished for sitting in a corner and just waiting for the killer to spot them. And for it to be 30 seconds, it will force them to move around a lot more. It will force them to not sit still for quite as long. I do wonder what the implications are in this regard for head-on, because head-on is a perk that if you get crows, you cannot use the perk. And so if you're in a locker for 10 seconds because you're trying to time the locker jump out correctly, does that make it so that that head-on is not usable anymore? I'm not entirely sure. So that might be like one detriment to the survivor side. But also losing collisions so that you can't be held hostage is a massive boon, because people who body blocked people into corners as killer, I mean, you're just assholes. This that's all it is. You're just an asshole if you do that. And so making like an anti-griefing measure in this way, I think, is always a good idea. The Bloodweb mass spending is incredible. I did it on the PTB to get my Springtrap to Prestige 3 immediately, and that was great. It took me like 30 seconds. Mostly just all of that in load times, because it was like, alright, spending your blood points. Here you go. Here's all the things you collected from that spend of 3 prestige levels. And that was it. And then in Prestige 3 with Springtrap, day 1. I've been saving the blood points, actually, this entire time to get Prestige 3 on Springtrap, because I'm actively so excited to play this killer when he comes to live. Even if he's not going to be like in my top 5 killers of all time, I still think it's going to be a lot of fun to play. And I would like to have everything immediately available on day 1 so that I can use his perks on other killers right away too. The DC penalty changes are great. I think that it being, like, let's say that you have a bad day of internet and you disconnect 3 times in a day. Well, now if you go into games later on, eventually those tokens will be wiped like every 20 matches. So you play a couple of normal matches and then you get back in, and then you're no longer being punished for accidentally disconnecting those few times, because it used to decrease at a tick of 1 per day. So let's say that you played 30 some matches, and then one game 30 some matches in the span of a week or two. And one day in that week or two, you come back and hold on, let me actually rephrase this. So for the DC penalty changes, let's say that in the next couple of days, it's the weekend or something, right? And you run into a cheater on like day 2 after playing some 10 matches or whatever, or 15 or 20, and you disconnect because you don't want to play against a cheater that's holding you hostage. Well, now that with these changes, if you've played enough games after those last ones that you disconnected, you're not going to be hit with a 48-hour ban. You're probably just going to get hit with a 5-minute because you've been playing games normally, and the game can now detect that. And I think it's a great change. Gamma setting in the game, it's something we needed for years. I think it's something that should have been included with the base game, but I'm glad that it's here now. Better late than never, and it's a good quality of life change. It's a change that needed to happen on this patch, and I'm glad that it is here. There's a couple of quality of life changes, like the Go Next prevention, the Mori update, where if someone's on the hook and the other one's on the ground, like on the hook second stage, you have to wait for the sacrifice animation to go through to Mori. The offering update, the map offering update specifically, to make it so that it's 20% instead of a guarantee, feels so nice. I'm so happy about that. And then the spawn rule update as well, to make it less easy for survivors to split gens at the start of a game before the trapper or any other lower tier killer can make it to them at the start of the game. I think are all fantastic quality of life changes. The killer perk changes are great because the perks that they buffed were underused. It felt like they were always kind of punching upwards, or that you had other perks that just did what they did but better. Like, why would I run Colubrine when I can just run Eruption? I mean, you can still run Eruption, but I think that, and I know that those two used to be paired together quite frequently, but I started playing like shortly after that meta was canned. But Colubrine and Eruption, or Colubrine itself, does have some potency now. Like, you have that passive regression and information that it can work off of. And now with it being 150% regression, it feels like you actually have a reason to run the perk now. So it actually has some potency. Survivor perk changes are also good. I think that it's a little bit dangerous to buff that much healing, but I don't know. Survivors getting resets quickly feels really satisfying. I played a few games with like the new botany knowledge with a med kit, because the item use changes are not items are no longer affected by botany knowledge, in case you didn't know, and that change feels pretty good. It feels pretty satisfying if you're playing Survivor, but if you're playing Killer against it, it feels so terrible because everyone's just healing in the span of like 6 seconds, and it feels a little bit crummy in some ways from the Killer side, but I can, for Survivor, it actually feels pretty good because it's like, okay, thank goodness I actually have a good perk that I can run here, instead of having to choose between, do I run anti-tunnel or do I run the Windows Chase build for the billionth time? Now you actually have options with really enticing upsides, and I think that has, well, there's something to be said about that, and I think that it's a good change. But we'll see just like how damaging it is to the meta of the game in the next few weeks to come. And the last thing that I wanted to say is that there's no Destling or bug fixes. I made that short as well, talking about how the new map on DBD also, you can't shoot through what would clearly be like really easy holes to shoot through, but well. And also there's like that weird chain break bug that's still active, so kind of unfortunate that that bug still hasn't been addressed, because it feels really bad to play Deathslinger when you land a shot, and because the person is going around a corner and the chain is also, like, the way that I understand it is that when a survivor goes around a corner and there is a small obstacle like a bench or a window or something along those lines in front of you, if the chain touches both the survivor going around the corner and the chain touches a low obstacle, when it connects, the chain will immediately retract as if you had missed the shot, even though you had clearly hit it, even though it plays the sound effect. it has like a weird hit validation thing that goes on there. I think that's been the most consistent thing that I've seen with that bug so far. Anyway, that is all I have to say. I had a lot to say. I didn't think I'd be recording for this long, but I hope you guys enjoyed listening to me ramble for a little bit, and I will get back to making more funny build videos soon. And I hope you guys are having a good day. Take care, and goodbye.